thanks to everybody joining this particular talk series. The idea or the topic for the discussion today is trying to understand from two folks who have been in this industry, Abhishek and Abhinav, on how social commerce could be an interesting channel for brands, what to keep in mind, when does it make sense, when does it not make sense. We also have Vinay, our co-host, partner at Fireside, been I would say, a very prolific investor on the brand side. And before that, also spent a lot of time building brands at other businesses like Unilever and all. Also a founder of a company. And my colleague Naman, part of the team at Stellaris itself. So shall we, if it's okay, maybe Abhinav, Abhishek, not in less than 2 minutes, if you guys can describe what Shop101 and SHEROES are doing around social commerce. That might get us started, and then we have a set of questions. And in parallel, my request to the audience is if you have questions, do share it in a Q&A format. We'll try to pick them up during the discussion, but ideally we'll keep the second half of the discussion open for Q&A in general.
Got it. Cool. Abhishek, with your permission, should I start?
Yes, please. Yes, please,
Okay.
Of course.
Great. So at Shop101, we've built a reseller-led social commerce platform where effectively what we have is there is a supplier who's, or in our parlance, it's the brand or the manufacturer of goods. And then there is an intermediary reseller who actually builds the network and sells to his or her network and expands that, and is ultimately responsible for driving consumer relationship and sales. And then, of course, there is the end consumer in our model. So effectively, in our reseller commerce model that Shop101 has built, the key word is the reseller, and that's the person who is responsible for building the network, driving consumer relationships, getting new people excited, closing the final sale. And the end result of that is, because this reseller network is spread out throughout the country, our penetration and depth of reach is very, very high. And so to say that if we were to look at our split of sales throughout the country and the top 20 cities, right, and remove them, more than 70% of our sales actually comes from beyond the top 20 cities. And I was looking at some recent data where it suggested that this number is inching up towards close to 80-85% as we speak, right? So the crux of it is that this massive network of resellers who build their business without any investment, without any prerequisite knowledge, just with hustle and firepower and skill, are driving the entire business. And through them, we are able to reach the nooks and corners of the country, which other channels actually not struggle, but take a lot of effort to reach to, right? Whether it's an offline channel or even online Amazon and Flipkarts of the world. So that's what we're doing in a nutshell at Shop101. And of course, we also have, given it's a D2C audience, I would also want to put a plug for our Dash101 offering, which is a parallel offering for D2C brands and entrepreneurs looking to set up their own, fulfill their orders through our Dash101 platform, or even set up their own websites and consumer storefronts. So that's a side offering that we have as well. So that's what we do at Shop101 overall. Abhishek, over to you. And of course, happy to double click and talk a lot more about the model in detail.
Got it. Thanks, Abhinav. So, at SHEROES, essentially, so what we built over the last 7 years is a very large women-only community. And what we realized from a social commerce landscape is that there are people, like Shop101 and other players who have solved a supply side problem and the logistics problem for people who want to sell in social commerce. But the problem that's still unsolved is that the social part of the commerce, which is the conversation, there is no real platform where this is happening. It's extremely fragmented, and it's happening through Instagram and so on and so forth. So essentially what's happening at SHEROES is we're building what we like to call a community marketplace. Hi, am I audible? I think, is it?
You are. You were breaking in and out in the middle, Abhishek, but now you are.
Got it. I'm just gonna keep my video off for a minute if that's fine. Sorry,
Sure.
I'm actually in Goa, and Goa has network problems. One of the trade-offs of living in Goa.
Now we are
Because any one of us would make happily.
Yes, possibly. I do recommend it. I think it's worth it overall. But no, so basically at Sheroes, what we're doing is building a community marketplace where the idea is that you have women who are selling all kinds of things, their own products and services, or and we specifically have also created it's gotten supply side inventory of D2C brands that we work with and we partner with, because a lot of them want to be in a specific kind of a platform which doesn't have other unbranded products. And net, we have all these women here who are selling things, and we also have all the women buyers on the same platform. So the social part of the commerce is also within Sheroes, right? And I think, because we've been around for a while, it's an extremely high trust ecosystem. And that leads to transactions being a lot more, I would say enabled in that sense between buyers and sellers. So yeah, that's what we do.
Got it. No, this is very helpful. So maybe, I can start with the first question, which is, maybe I'll start with Abhinav. You, why should, or how should a brand think about, different channels to sell, and where does social commerce channel fit into that? As in, are we addressing the same audience? Is there a different kind of audience, different behavior? Because there are, there have been platforms like Amazon and Flipkart and all who've been around long enough. So what is the advantage, both financially and non-financially, going through these channels?
Got it. So I will take a slightly longer route to describe this, given this answer you have basically asked me to describe the model and its underpinnings. So this will take a little bit, but bear with me for that. And by the way, I also realized that my model, Shop101's model, is slightly different from what Sheroes is doing. So Abhishek, feel free to chip in where it differs from what we've built at Sheroes. But let me take a crack at, very simply put, Amazon versus Shop101, and let me just distill down how do the two differ. Now, Amazon, if you look at it, is built with a fundamental set of assumptions. It starts with the fact that there is a need. I want a product which I know, so I want to probably buy, for lack of a better word, maybe this shirt, right? And I know exactly what brand it is, what size it is, and I go and type, or maybe at least I know it's a blue shirt, right? And I go in and type that, and it will throw me a few set of results with some recommendation, and that's how typically my journey would start. And then I would pick. If it is usually I would read a little bit of reviews, ratings. If it's just a very visual purchase, it's fine. Otherwise, I would typically go into reviews, ratings, read about the product, and then purchase the product. That's the typical flow of an Amazon. Now, in that, if you think about it, it's few assumptions have been made here. The assumption is that you've started with a very clear need or a very clear product which you went and searched for, right? Which is why it's if you see most of our purchases on Amazon start with a search. And second, you've then gone in and compared by reading ratings and reviews and the product description yourself. So which assumes that you are very savvy enough to navigate the website, savvy enough to read a lot of content and compare and contrast, right? So those are some fundamental assumptions which have been made. When we think about social commerce, and especially reseller-based social commerce, Shop101, these assumptions basically are turned around on its heads. Our model is a much more of a browse-first model, where people get products which are curated for them by resellers or by people they trust, which show up in their feeds, right? So it's a very browse-first model. It's a very curated model. Second, it's a model where because there's a reseller, there's an intermediary, there's a person helping you with this product. You don't need to, as a consumer, you don't need to read up content. You don't need to go in and do the, put your own head to it. There is somebody who's very, just there helping you out. If in some ways, if it feels like, it is like almost you are in a shopping mall where, you are browsing products, and then there's a salesman also trying to help you, or a sales lady also trying to help you. do you want this, or can I show you more, etc. So it's a classic case of shopping where you might have heard, chalo shopping chalte hain, kya shop karna hai, we will go and see in the market. And also a classic case of bhaiya aur dikhao, where the salesman or the sales lady is actually showing you more products. So it's just a fundamentally different way of looking at the shopping behavior in itself. Now, what that does is it actually means that if you want to buy a mobile phone, if you want to sell a mobile phone, Amazon is a beautiful place, because if you know what brand you want, you probably know your spec, you know the price range. It's a fairly narrow band that you go to. You just see all the products in one go, compare the ratings, reviews, and that's it. But what if predominantly Indian fashion, home decor, kitchen items, things where you actually don't really start with a very clear need, you browse and decorative items, you even beauty products, you go through it and you experience it and then you purchase, or somebody tells you. For that, the reseller model works beautifully, right? And this is just the concept where if I were a brand, how I should think about whether I should be Amazon first or I should be a Shop101 first, which channel would work for me better, right? Whether I'm a product which is searched and compared, or whether I'm a product which is browsed and experienced and bought over a period of time. But there are other nuances which have happened over because of the model. Now, because we are going through resellers, and we will, I'm sure we will talk about it. But let me just say that a couple of things also happen. One, that in every other model, the model, you have to go to a shop, right? The consumer has to go to a shop, whether open the Amazon app or physically go to a shop. This is a model where the shop comes to you, right? Which is somebody who's curated products for you are showing up in your WhatsApp feed, in your Instagram feed. So think about it. Products have been curated by someone who you know, or who you have known, who you trust, show up in your feed. I mean, and you will get that at home. Of course, you will purchase, right? So that's what driving the growth of this channel very rapidly. And the other thing that a lot of our friends at HUL and PNG always say, right? Jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai. Now, you've cracked this because you have basically gotten eyeballs via a trusted channel in front of the consumers, and hence the purchase happens. So I think that's that. And one final point on, we'll talk about CAC, but let me just say that the cost of reaching the customer via this channel is very low for the platform. That's for Shop101. But what it inherently then means is that we are able to sell a much lower AOV product than an Amazon or a Flipkart, right? Because our inherent cost of acquiring a customer is low, and hence we are able to build onto this unbranded long tail product, which nobody else has been able to crack, or at least not before the model became popular, right? And that means that if you really want to go and sell lower value items, Shop101 would be a fantastic place. Now, the corollary also is that there's a certain segment, and as you would have realized, that there's a certain TG which is buying from this channel. Now, this TG is somebody who prefers conversation much more, is much more happier talking to people and getting recommendations versus searching products and checking out on their own, right? The traditional D2C model, as we are saying. So in case so you have to basically think about where does your product lie. If it is a high value, easily comparable branded product, and that's what you're gunning for, then probably an Amazon or a Flipkart could be a better choice. And if you are a mass looking to scale up in Bharat and get to the depths of the country, then a Shop101 would be a better choice.
Got it. And Abhishek, maybe a question to you. I remember a few months back when we had chatted, you were trying to get some of the D2C brands onto your platform. And I think there is a question in the chat group also that a lot of these D2C brands have slightly mass premium kind of positioning. So yeah, taking from Abhinav's last point, do you think you guys are very different focus, or would it be similar focus for you guys as well?
So the way we think about it is, what we really put at the front of it is women sellers, right? Now, a woman seller can sell, I would say broadly, three types of things, or three personas, archetypes. One is she's selling products and services that are her own. She's making them herself, or she's delivering the service herself. That's the first archetype. The second archetype is she is selling products from, I'm broadly going to call it, say, third-party reseller platforms, which should be a Shop101, Glow Road, a Meesho, etc. Right? And typically these tend to be the long tail of unbranded products. Right? And the third kind of inventory which we are curating as Sheroes is D2C brands, right? And we're specifically wanting to curate only D2C brands as the inventory there. Now, so we kind of end up working with all three, right? So a woman who is selling all three, and so we're obviously constantly kind of getting more brands on board for our own inventory, but we have women already Meesho resellers or Shop101 resellers or whatever else, and they're selling on the community platform, right? So we basically kind of given them a digital shop on the community, and it's content-based selling. To the first question you asked, Abhinav, I want to add one thing at a very, very zoomed out level. If you think about it, more like typically e-commerce today is very search and intent driven, but consumers are, and this is true for consumers across, I think, Bharat as well as the upper tier, consumers are spending a lot more time and eyeballs on content, right? Content consumption is really what is taking a lot more time. So the point is, social commerce is really a way for you to get your products and the purchasing of your products layered onto content consumption, right? And that's where our thesis for a community marketplace also comes from, that inherently content consumption is not going to go anywhere, and that's why it makes sense to do, right? So regardless of what you are as a brand, I think it would also make sense for some premium products for sure, but yes, it does work for the slightly more massy, lower AOV kind of stuff. But I think in general, the idea is to kind of come on the content piece. To the question on the that's come up. So I think even though there's broadly if you were to sort of say two kinds of brands that are happening, right? One is the vendors, the manufacturers, etc., who are all suppliers on Amazon and Flipkart, and the second is what are already D2C brands, right? So I think increasingly those vendors and suppliers are also seeing the advantage of branding and this whole D2C movement. So a lot of them themselves are trying to kind of get into this move, right? They're building their own websites and they're trying to kind of build their own channels. So I think that's an evolution that will happen anyway. The fundamental problem that continues is whether you talk of D2C or more traditional, there is an insane amount of supply, and long tail product discovery is broken on any platform which is catalog driven. Any platform which is going to be catalog driven, a Myntra, an Amazon, take anything, right? It just cannot enable long tail product discovery. That has to be content first.
And just to double click on this, you've kind of very clearly laid out, there are certain categories which do much better on marketplaces, and there are categories which is discovery, content oriented, which do much better. Is there a stark difference in also the shopper profile, or is it the same shopper who shops for category A in marketplaces which are more standard, and the more discovery categories on social platforms? Some commentary around the profile.
Yeah. So at least today, okay, let me put it this way. So the premium shopper, which is shopping on a Myntra or a Flipkart or an Amazon, so to say, is also shopping on social, right? But their purchase patterns on social are slightly different. They would look for more unique products, which are probably sold by smaller niche brands and sold by people who are designing the products themselves and are differentiated products, versus the products that we enable and empower this wide network of people, this wide network of resellers to sell. They are much more massy, and hence the audience is not the top, say, 1% of the consumption, but will be the more broader middle class. So it's not so much about that premium people don't buy off social. They do buy off social, but then their consumption of social is more unique products, more personalized products versus more massy products. And as a platform, our conscious call has been to go very deep and cater to a much larger base. Hence this focus on so to say more massy products which cater to the middle class, so to say the broad middle class.
And therefore, should brands then look at different mixes for social because of the uniqueness requirement of these shoppers? I heard something around that Abhishek was also talking about. How should brands think about what their mix should be, what their portfolio play should be?
No, absolutely. See, what we have seen for us as a platform work very well is a 3-digit price point, right? Typically a 500 to 700 rupee price point. And there also typically our mainstay consumer is a value conscious consumer. So you can't hold me to it and say, hey, try and sell a 200 rupees Starbucks to your customer. That's not going to happen, right? For them, the value does not exist. But a 500 to a 700 rupee sari works beautifully, or a collection of beauty products would work, right? Or a home decor item, where the perceived value is very clearly a good deal within 500 to 700 rupees, that will work. So that's the sweet spot in which we operate, and we've seen that we've been able to deliver a good experience and also move volumes at that price point. And typically, what we've seen, I think, and based on even on the question in the chat that I'm reading, that a lot of the D2C brands start with a slightly more mass premium or even more premium offering, and which is fine because you can beautifully you can position your brand as a premium brand. But then as you look to go into Bharat, you will have to create these offerings which are slightly differentiated, slightly lower price, and maybe they're only exclusive on this channel under a different sub brand, or it's just a different SKU. I mean, different people can adopt different strategies depending on the product range, but yeah, that's what would sort of work really well.
Abhishek and Abhinav, I have a question for you. So typically in D2C brands, they're very particular about controlling their brand identity, brand story, their entire narrative around the brand. Whereas, if they let someone else prepare a content or drive that story, how do you mitigate the risk of brand losing their essence? And this is specifically true for D2C brands as compared to vendor-led brands.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. So yeah, one of the ways we do this at Sheroes is, so at least for any sellers who are selling D2C inventory, we make it's a slightly higher touch model where we have the brand stakeholders, typically the founders or the brand owners, actually come and take a session for these resellers, walk them through the products, the USP of the products, where did it come from, who to sell it to, why to sell it, etc. And what we also do is we sort of keep a continuous flow of collateral that the brand is preparing, whether for their social media channels or any other channels, and we keep kind of putting that up in the seller community so that they're all getting what the brand is about and what it's not about, right? And that kind of happens. Now, obviously, is it the same as a brand doing it by themselves? No. But I think, and what kind of links the which customer this is slightly here is that typically they're selling to a customer who would not ordinarily have gone to a D2C channel and bought from a D2C website for sure. It's also unlikely that they would have bought from an Amazon or Flipkart, just given the persona. And what happens is this is a transaction where it is very significantly enabled because the trust between the buyer and the seller, right? Now, one of the ways, so I run this community of D2C brands called D2C Insider, which has about 300-400 odd brands founders in there, right? So, and I think from my experience also speaking to all these founders, one thing is clear to me that the shipping part and the delivery part of a D2C brand is actually a massive part of the experience, right? When you actually get the product, how is it packaged, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we also do is this is a completely dropship model where once the order comes to the customer, to the brand will actually deliver it to the customer directly, right? So I think at least in that sense, we're able to make sure that a part of the experience stays, completely true as to how the brand would like it as well. Abhinav, sorry, you were saying something.
No, I was just saying, yeah, I think very well covered. Very simply put, for us, the content around the products is actually provided by the brand or the supplier, right? So whatever is the narrative, that's exactly what we use. Now, can the reseller then go in and pitch as effectively as the D2C brand themselves? Of course, it's the classic problem of having a vast base of salespeople. So you have to go through that. But at least the key visuals and the key materials that are being shared are exactly what the brand has shared with us. So that's fine. And today, the beauty about a brand also is that typically brands also have a lot of content on YouTube. And as the consumers and the users are becoming savvier, and with data proliferation, people have this tendency, if it's a branded product, they will go to YouTube, they will, because it's a video format which they can consume easily, they will consume it. So I don't think that if I were a D2C brand, I would be scared about my brand either positioning going wrong or brand value getting diluted in that sense. I think it's a very safe channel in that sense.
I had a question around this whole vernacular piece now, with all of these social media channels getting increasingly, fragmented. You've got the Takataks, you've got the excuse me, Josh, Trell, etc. Where do you see this? Is this converging? Is social selling converging with nano influencers? Is that a completely different thing? Should brands think of it as, over the next 2 to 3 years, some kind of convergence here?
So I would take that question. It's a very interesting question, and the way I think about it is, in a Unilever, in a retail company, there is a marketing department and there is a sales department. An influencer is a marketing person and a reseller is a salesperson, and both have their own place in the ecosystem of products, right? So an influencer can communicate your message one to many and to a very specific audience in a very beautiful manner. But the reseller channel is where it's basically a hardcore selling. It's a sales model. So while they seem similar, but both have their own different roles, so to say.
I've got a slightly different take on that, and perhaps the reason why I have a slightly different take is that, at least in the context that where we Sheroes is operating from a community marketplace, the social part of the commerce is happening through content that these sellers are creating. Right. Of course, it's also like following up on a WhatsApp. And the idea is, this content becomes discoverable, obviously within Sheroes, but, anywhere across to any internet user. So I think what's going to happen is, as resellers, and sellers, even if they're selling their own inventory, at least in my Sheroes context, some of these people will start to create content to build a following for them and, their customers, etc. And they will start to become influencers of some form, right? Nano influencers of some form. And they will leverage that to get more and more traction. And what will happen is, obviously there are certain tiers of influencers who will, as they're trying to sort of struggle and figure out how to monetize their audience, they will come to reselling, or they'll sort of pick up the creator economy, where they start making something of their own and sell it. And they will eventually also become, move towards social commerce. So I think over a longer spread of time, it does converge, because essentially, if you look at it very simply, somebody who is more successful in business will create an audience over time and therefore become an influencer gradually, right? And somebody who has an audience will continue to sort of find and hustle ways to, monetize that audience, and selling is obviously one of them that will eventually happen. So I think it will converge at some point. It's still a slow trend, I feel. And one of the reasons there is because at least the top tier of influencers, right, aren't really taking to social commerce. What's happening is, if you're an influencer and you're selling, it's kind of looked down upon within the influencer community, right? And I think that needs to change for this to become a very aspirational thing in itself, and that hasn't happened yet. So once that happens at the absolute sort of top tier of influencers, right, I think then it will start to happen. Now, if you literally look at like a Priyanka Chopra, right, I mean, somebody like that has created her own brand, right? I mean, in the US, she has this brand in personal care called Anatomy, right? And now in India, you don't see as much of that so far. As that, even if that tier of influencer starts to happen, I think it will trickle down. And that's when I see it will start to converge a lot more. To your vernacular question, I didn't really honestly understand the question, because I feel that the social commerce seller and shopper is much more a tier 2 and 3 and 4 India person, and therefore exists significantly in vernacular societies for sure, but is also equally a decently educated young girl or a housewife who speaks, writes, reads English, and is wanting to hustle to just earn additional income.
I think the question was more, Abhishek, around the fragmentation of social media, and therefore different followerships being garnered on different platforms, and how that translates into commerce.
So at least for the way I look at it, for a reseller from our standpoint on the fragmentation bit, right? These are all just different ways of reaching the end consumer for a influencer or for a reseller. And we started building this over the last 6 years. We've seen an evolution of platforms. When we were starting out, it was primarily Instagram first. Then suddenly Facebook Marketplace started ballooning and it became Facebook. Then suddenly WhatsApp proliferated and everybody called it a WhatsApp economy. Then it became a share chat economy. Now you are calling it a TikTok and Moj economy or a MX Taka economy. Tomorrow it will be something else. I think these are just mediums which will continue to evolve as different channels or different social platforms come in. But at the crux of it, it's only a matter of how you are reaching to more people. That's at the crux of it. So more the merrier is at least how I would look at it. I'm sure Abhishek has a different point of view, but yeah.
One of the challenges or questions, actually, let me not call it a challenge, but like if you look at traditionally, people like Amway and Herbalife and all, they used, quote unquote, similar effort in the offline world, right? But those brands for a long period of time were not available elsewhere. As in that was the only channel that the brand was available. But let's say I'm a brand who's already selling on Flipkart and Amazon, and then I start selling on the social commerce side. Is that even advisable? Because first question is like how do you beat the logistics capabilities of some of the larger platforms? Second, why should I drive through this channel when it is anyways, I can see it, I can compare on other places and all. So just curious to know, as in, if I'm a brand, should I be there on 2 channels with the same brand at all?
I think it is indeed a tricky question because of also the fact that typically the AOVs, at least in the D2C brands that we have seen, are usually higher on the other platforms, right? And our sweet spot is slightly lower. So I think even from that standpoint, probably it will make more sense to have specific SKUs and specific sub-brand line or product lines which work well. I think the logistics question is fairly solved, right? Because for Shop101, we provide the entire end-to-end logistics, pick up from anywhere in the country and deliver to anywhere in the country. So that none of that is a hassle. It's as good as selling on Shop101 for a brand is as good as selling on an Amazon. You don't have to deal with this network of lakhs of resellers or the consumers throughout the country. For you, it's just one simple Shop101 panel. You will get all orders there. You download the manifest and you ship. And our guy will, relevant shipping partners will come and pick up from your warehouse, shop, home, wherever you run the thing out of. So I think it's much more of a question on how do you want to position your brand for the end user and the channel. Everything else is very well taken care of, whether by Shop101 or by Amazon, and is fairly standardized and similar. So that's not really a concern, so to say.
Got it.
I think if I can add to that, just the way I think about it is, it depends a little bit on which social platform you're sort of taking for social commerce, and what is the final TG therein. If that final TG, the target audience, is overlapping with your existing customers, either for your own D2C website or an Amazon channel, then it may not be the best idea unless you would just obviously want to, accelerate penetration. But if you can sort of build the conviction that, okay, this is an entirely different TG or a significantly different TG, which is not completely overlapping, then I think it makes sense to look at it as an additional sales channel. And the reason I also say that is obviously biased, because where I'm coming from is what we've been trying to do, at least for D2C brands, is to kind of really highlight this as a distinct channel entirely that has, minimal overlap with existing kind of sales channels for them.
Got it. Actually, one of the questions out here, maybe I'll ask it in a different way, which is, do brands have the freedom to control the final price to the consumer in this platform? Or is it the retailer who's setting the price and, I might find it cheaper on Amazon one day, expensive than Amazon on another day?
So we at least at Shop101, we provide 2 models. One is a fixed MRP kind of model where the reseller has the choice to price the product between his or her margin and the MRP. And of course, we can narrow that range and try and fix the price, but reseller does have some freedom. In fact, and the other is a more open-ended where we give a base price and then reseller can add on a margin on top of it. So both models exist. Typically, we have seen D2C brands take more of an MRP-based approach where they'll say that here is the cap, here is your margin. Now, if you want to discount the product by giving away your margin, be my guest. that's sort of the take that we've worked with.
I think
Yeah.
For a D2C brand thing, actually, Rahul, at least I think it was you who asked the question.
Yeah.
Because the physical product is an MRP, right? It's a regulated product. It's not an unstructured product in that sense. So now the max is fixed. So in a reseller framework, you will typically not be able to control the price unless the business model is based on affiliate. Because then what all you're doing is, you're saying you sell it for XYZ and you have to sell it for a minimum of this much, right? So then the reseller is not really working on an absolute margin, they're only working on a percentage. And you can say that, you can just sell it for exactly this price or more if you want. But I think fundamentally, you keep the margin narrow, but you don't really have that much control on the price as much as you would on your own channel, for sure.
Abhishek, and I think a lot of people are curious to know whether their own products or categories would work on social commerce. So if you can also highlight what categories, if you can name the categories what will work, better on social commerce channels, I think a lot of questions will get answered. And I think before you answer, I would also like to make an announcement that people can raise your hands. We'll bring you on board. You can directly ask questions to Abhinav and Abhishek. So feel free to raise questions. So over to you, Abhinav and Abhishek. What categories you think work?
Abhinav, why don't you go first?
Yeah. So for me, for Shop101, we've seen unstructured long tail fashion items, which includes Indian ethnic wear, sari, kurti, dress material, suits, or men's t-shirt, tops, or women's western wear, all in that price point of 500, 700, 800 rupees, right? A triple digit price point work really well. With home decor and kitchen items, which is over the last 1.5 years suddenly has become the largest category for us with the times of lockdown and consumer behavior changing. And of course, we've also seen things like footwear, beauty products sell off the shelves for us. So typically, fashion, lifestyle, home is a broad category which has worked beautifully. Others, we've seen success in pockets, and there we would need to see much more around what the specific product is, what the price point is. But as a thumb rule, long tail fashion, beauty, home decor, kitchen items works very well.
What about health and wellness?
Health and wellness, we've experimented, but it's not seen as much of a success yet. Ideally, we believe it should, but we haven't gotten there yet. At least not at the mass level that we operate.
And for more CPG categories, Abhinav, like the discovery problem obviously is solved by your platform and I'm sure Abhishek's platform. But because the inherent nature of CPG is that repeats need to come in, and since these products could potentially be available at a Big Basket or a Flipkart or an Amazon, does that inhibit the relevance of CPG on these platforms, or is that something that the brands have to work with a different portfolio, or is there a different approach?
So I think two things, right? One, I will take Abhishek's point.
Yeah.
So one was Abhishek's point on CPG was around content, right? So if you are selling products with content or recommendation first or advice first, so that's a very unique value proposition on any of the social commerce platforms, right? So that is not really done by any Amazon or Flipkart. And of course, the second part that you said is a different product or a different range. If you're doing that, then of course, then you're just using this as creating a separate range. That's fine. But the crux of it, at least to me, is that is there content first or advice first or recommendation first here, and that's what drives CPG sales or not.
Great.
I think Vinay, to your question, that does become a challenge. But I think from we've seen that an Amazon flash sale or a D2C website flash sale will be only like for a certain period of time. And net, this seller might come back and say that, hey, this customer went and bought from the website, but eventually that customer will come back to this same reseller and continue to buy from them in 9 times out of 10. From a broad category perspective for us, we've had a bunch of kitchenware as well, I think work really well. And a lot of CPG, actually, personal care, health and wellness sort of products, healthy snacking, teas and things like that. Educational toys for kids or like other things for kids. That's been an interesting space as well. We've consciously actually not try to not do too much of. We're actually thinking about doing products which become tricky from a returns perspective, right? Because the moment returns spike up, it's a challenge for the brands, and in a dropship model, that's definitely something you want to stay away from. So things like apparel or shoes, which are very selective, we still haven't really kind of, I would say, done too deeply. But yeah, I think these are some of the categories we've seen do really well and kind of take off quite rapidly.
Got it. One question which is very interesting, very unusual question, which is the first one on, if I'm a domestic unorganized brand, right, and I want to become a proper D2C brand, or let's call it a proper brand, do you guys provide any help in helping me figure out how to build it, whom to target, which reseller to go to, any advice or assistance that the platform provides? And this is, let's call it a seller brand trying to become a consumer brand.
So, so I would break it down into two things, right? Today, we at least don't have a formal program to do this, but what we definitely do is for every seller or supplier on our platform, we have an individual account manager, and their role is to actually help you and help you get the most out of our platform. So we will advise you what are the kind of products that sell very well, how can you increase your sale, what kind of content is required to come across the like a formal brand, so to say. Because product imagery is very important, but now as we are getting more video first, videos are very important. We'll also help you curate the quality and advise you on that. But we don't have a formal program as such, but we do definitely handle the suppliers a lot, and especially people who come in with a very clear ask and intent for help. There we are much more, more than willing to help and help you graduate, so to say, to a much more formal value proposition.
I think let's have audience questions now. So Pulkit.
Yeah, hi. So I just had a question for everyone. So do you think that, considering the boom of D2C brand that we are seeing right now, 2 or 3 years down the line, discovery of D2C brand for any consumer will be a major problem? Because I think they are too much dependent on Instagram and YouTube for the discovery aspect, at least. So yeah, what are your, what are the...
Absolutely. I strongly agree. I think, there's always been a lot of supply in India of different products, and it's typically been unstructured. Now you're seeing this whole new upcoming structured branded supply come in. The biggest problem is long tail product discovery, right? How many you will, if you're sort of buying on Amazon, you're not spending hours and finding new brands and products, right? The only way, as you said today, it's happening for even most of us is in Instagram, etc. So that is where social commerce will absolutely be relevant to drive that long tail product discovery, right? And I think more and more brands will kind of start coming to social commerce and folks like Shop101, folks like us, to say that, hey, I need my product to get discovered more using content. So can you kind of help me with that, etc. Right? But I think eventually, yes, this is going to be a challenge across the board, right? Because today you name something as niche as you want, you'll find 5 brands in it. I mean, literally something as niche as dried masalas for different curries or coconut chutneys. There are 5 brands for it. I'm not even kidding. I'm not making this up, right? Like I know 5 brands for that, something as niche as that. So it is definitely going to be a challenge. But also, I think the thing is, a lot of products and D2C companies, right, are extremely solid cash making businesses. So not all of them necessarily need to scale, to levels that Rahul and Vinay would probably like. But they can kind of generate a decent kind of side income for you. So I think that it also comes from a question of, okay, hey, is everybody actually trying to build a brand that just scales that big, or even if it's decent size, is fine.
Right. And how do the brands perceive credit as an option, right? Because that's the best platform, I think, best curated platform for D2C that exists out there in the market. So like, how do the brand perceive across their life cycle? Early on, it's good to get traction, but do they plan to or intend to stay it as they grow? Or what are the views on that?
Vinay, Rahul, Naman, one of you guys want to take that?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Pulkit,
properly.
I think if you can make your question a bit crisp
Correct.
and
Right, so-
directly
right.
ask a question, that will be useful. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, Cred is one of the platforms that many D2C players are leveraging for the visibility issue, right? Because they have a curated marketplace. So, do you think that brands will leverage Cred, a platform like Cred, just for the initial stage of their journey, just to get to a decent scale where customers know them and leave it later, or it can be a platform where customers can stick, where the brands can stick for a longer period of time and make it a
Because
formal
I think
channel for them?
we'll have to call Kunal Shah for that particular question to answer. But at least my current assessment is that it is not an e-commerce platform. It's a very good, when a new brand launches, it's a very good platform to display the brand amongst the premium audience. But on a regular basis, making sure that you get the product. If you don't like it, you can return it. What are other people saying, ratings. There are so many things that you want from an e-commerce platform, which I'm assuming Cred is not trying to get into that direction. If they do it, then they'll become a full-fledged curated marketplace.
And I think one more point
if
that
I can
I would
actually add, yeah, sorry, go for it.
Okay. So I was just saying that one of the things that I feel, while Abhishek spoke about how even for a very niche category, there are now literally 5 brands, which is true. But to me, at least, it comes down to the simple fact that how do you identify that niche? What do you stand for? And that's what is going to help you differentiate. The place where social commerce can come in and help you differentiate is the fact that because every reseller knows their audience very deeply, they will pick the right brands which are relevant for their own customers, right? So a social platform will help you get to the audience which is most relevant to you. And it could be a smaller audience, like Abhishek said, that it might not be, the brand might not become very, very large, but you will definitely get to, the most relevant set of consumers in the country. So that's definitely what social platforms can help you do.
There was another question, Abhinav, which somebody asked, which is relevant to what you just said. If you and I, given that we have worked together for a long period, you have lakhs of resellers, right? Yeah. Now, as a brand, how do I get myself, first of all, visible to the reseller herself?
Correct.
Are there algorithms that you use? Is there,
yes.
Is there a way to, let's say, run a program and do it? How do you do it?
So we do a couple of things, right? So we've made the process very seamless for the brands, for the suppliers. You come in and you sign up on and register on the platform and work with our team, and you provide us the products and content. From there, our system takes over, which is we will put your products up on the platform for everybody to browse and see. Now, our recommendation and our algorithms will figure out where it is the most relevant, to which reseller it is the most relevant. And it will also bake in the fact that, we have these internal metrics to see what's the engagement on each of those products by the resellers. And then we see that if it works with that particular set of audience or that particular set of resellers, then we show it to more. So it's an elaborate process where to the brand and to the supplier, it's as simple as हाँ मैंने photo और product भेज दिए, details भेज दी हैं and content दे दिया है. But in the backend, it is a full engine which is working to figure out what's the appropriate matching, how much to push, when to push, and we also bake in the fact that what is the feedback from the reseller and the end consumers, the reviews, the ratings, the real images which are being uploaded back onto the platform, they also get factored in. So the better your product sells, the more visibility you will get, the better the ratings you get, the more visibility you will get.
Naman, you want to
so in that sense, it's a fairly simple process for the suppliers.
Okay. Deepak? Hello? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead, Deepak, and let's keep it crisp so that we can get more questions.
Okay, a very simple question. You've got multiple brands trying to sell with you. And I just understood the algorithm that works at throwing things to the resellers. Is there a way that a brand can say, I'm new, I want the total attention of your resellers. You charge probably say 10% as a margin. Can I come and do some incentives like I would do in the traditional business to try and motivate your resellers to sell more? Top 10 resellers get a trip to Europe. top 30 resellers get a party in Mumbai, so on and so forth. Is there a platform, is there a manner in which I can do something that can incentivize your resellers to focus on my brand?
No, absolutely. So we do these occasional sales and events and actually leverage, like you said, the incentives for the resellers to drive traffic. We also have, to this algorithm point, we also have what we internally call Shop101 credits, which are incentives on an ongoing basis. And you can work with us and we can make sure that resellers get more incentives on your particular products and brands, thereby incentivizing them to pick it up. End of the day, our algorithms will make sure that if the product, even after pushing, the resellers are not giving good feedback or it's not getting good engagement, then despite all the push, they will only get as much visibility. So we can give it an initial push using incentives, but fundamentally the product needs to click with our audience.
Dharinder, you can probably go ahead with your question next.
Okay, so very simple, very basic question. All that I want to know is that, if I've got a bouquet of products, some of which I feel, maybe from what I've understood, maybe too premium or may not be this may not be the right platform. So what I'm left with is, a very few SKUs which would ideally suit here. So is there a minimum number of SKUs that I'm supposed to have if I want to sell on your platform?
So more than, for at least for Shop101, and I'm sure Sheroes has a different approach, but for Shop101, we don't really look at a minimum number of SKU. If you give me one SKU, that's a blockbuster. Would love to have you on the platform right away. So it's not at all about a minimum number of SKUs, but whatever SKUs we put up, they should perform well and see the engagement and sales on our platform, and then have good feedback from the end users as well.
I think the way I would probably think about that, as you look to list on any platform, would be even if you think it might be a little premium or a little expensive, still keep a range. So for example, when we get brands on board, we tell them to, if obviously depending on the SKUs they have, we also ask them to sometimes create custom combos and have SKUs right from like a 200, if they can, like a 200 rupee price point, up to a 1500 rupee price point, right? And obviously more as well if they have, or like up to 2000, and maybe at least about 5 to 8 SKUs. What happens then is, because basically the sellers are also trying and experimenting with a new product, right? And when they're experimenting with a new product, if they have a little bit of flexibility, right? That, hey, I want to buy 6 cups instead of 2, or I only want to buy 2 cups, not 6 cups, etc., it will help them convert the sale, right? Because the thing here is, neither do we as Sheroes and nor do you as a brand really get to know what's the conversation happening between a seller and a customer, right? So the more flexibility you can give a seller, the more likely a thing might actually close, and you will come back with some, kind of insight to say that, hey, you know what? The 2-cup combo is working much better than the 6 coffee cup set, for example.
Yeah, Raj, go ahead, please.
Hi. So I'm planning to launch a food product for the tier 1 markets, the urban cities. So I just wanted to know, what are some of the low-cost acquisition channels one can adopt for a pure play D2C brand? If I want to, let's say, have my website on Shopify and then acquire customers to buy the product. And what do you see the trends here, or what are some of the ways a brand can adopt to lower their acquisition costs?
Raj, I don't know if Abhishek, Abhinav, we have a view. Maybe this may not be the right forum, because we were only planning to talk about social commerce here. Obviously, there are other channels. You can be in Amazon, you can be using Facebook, Google marketing on your own website. There are grocery companies like Big Basket and all. There are group buying grocery companies like City Mall and Deal Share and all. So there are a lot of platforms, but I don't know if we'll be able to answer that question here. Yeah. Molly, please go ahead.
Hi, my question is with regards to returns. I wanted to know, I mean, there's a general understanding that, when you sell on these social commerce platforms, it results in a very high level of RTO. So I want to understand what are the rate of returns that you generally see, and what do you provide in order to manage that?
So Molly, I would
So
say that
at Sheroes, what we
Abhishek, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So at Sheroes, what we do is I think what we've seen is COD is something that leads to a lot of RTO. So we just don't do COD orders at all, right? I mean, the seller has to buy the product, and obviously only then it goes. And something we've kind of instructed all sellers is just don't let your buyers, kind of push you into doing a COD approach, period. Because if they want it, they'll sort of pay you upfront for it, right? That's one. And the second thing that we've done is obviously there are certain categories where returns are higher for a genuine reason. Like shoes is a very classic example, right? I mean, getting shoe fit right, or maybe pants, etc., are a harder category. So we haven't really gone to those. I think right now, from a very systemic approach, this is what we do. I think as we also scale this up, something, for example, we do for other D2C brands, it's already at Sheroes, is we have like a remote service, through which a remote workforce through which we call customers for any order and verify the order before actually dispatching it. So I'm sure, we already have that intelligence and processes built out. We do it for a whole bunch of D2C brands. We can start doing it for ourselves for this piece as well. Abhinav.
Yeah. So Molly, I would not label that social commerce platforms see high RTO. I would label it differently. So first, at least our approach is very different from Abhishek's, where we actually make sure that we provide COD on pretty much every single product, because the Indian consumers still, especially the Bharat consumers who we are trying to reach, is very much cash on delivery first. And also because of that, the transaction flow becomes very simple, because as a reseller, I've told you, hey, the product will come to you, you hand over the money, and that's it. There's no physical exchange required by the reseller, so the reseller can sell pretty much anywhere, and the model works. So COD definitely helps in getting scale. And the other thing I would say is that as you go out to a much more massy audience and to a much more consumer, which is much more deeper in the country, you will see higher RTOs, because that's just the nature of the segment that you're targeting. So it's more of a question on whether do you want to target that segment versus not, in terms of just the comparative RTOs from, say, a top tier consumer in metros versus in smaller towns. Having said that, we've spent a lot of time trying to optimize within these guardrails the RTO problem. So we've built a full prediction model. As soon as the order is placed, it buckets every order into what is the probability of this order being RTO. Now, below a certain threshold, we just immediately cancel the order, because we are not even going to do anything to do with it. Between a certain range, we actually ask the reseller to confirm that their consumer will take the order. And only above a certain threshold do we automatically ship the order, right? In some cases, we also actually ask the reseller to punch the address again, because our systems have flagged that the address is incomplete or wrong. So we will actually make sure that the address is punched correctly. So all of the system intelligence has been built into our system, where we are making sure that we are able to reduce the RTO and make it, within acceptable limits for the brands, for us as a platform as well. By the way, even we as a platform, if anything, the maximum amount of money is lost by the platform, because the cost of RTO is borne by us. So if the brand is actually supplying on time, Shop101 is taking hit for the RTO, and the one who's losing the money is us. So we actually make sure that we reduce the RTO to a minimum.
Arnab, you can ask your question.
Yeah, I'm Arnab from Impeccable Innovations, Bangalore. My question to the founders is, have you seen any paradigm shift in terms of healthcare related products in this COVID, other than the apparels? We are into the gluten-free food manufacturing. We are especially a D2C brand, sell through our own website. So we are looking for social commerce which can do, but unfortunately, this is a slightly premium product that we are selling. But I'm sure if you can give us an insight, what is the exact category you have seen a paradigm shift in this first wave, second wave, or the future waves? Thank you.
Yeah. So for us, I mean, our social commerce thing isn't, I mean, we didn't have an existence pre-pandemic, so I can tell you what's worked and what's not during the pandemic. We have seen a whole bunch of health conscious purchasing happen, right? So brands like a Hearty Bite, brands like a Timios, brands like a Sirona, which isn't really COVID related, but it's still about healthy stuff. Right? Like a Pure Naturals, a Sprightly. So from a, F&B perspective, I'm specifically telling you, NutriPanda, we have seen these brands work well. I think the thing with gluten-free specifically is, it is obviously a premium, but my experience with that category specifically is that the problem is a lot more niche, right? And it's also a problem which, while might be relevant to a lot of us, isn't really understood by a lot of us. So for example, of the 100 odd of people who joined today, easily 50% would have been lactose intolerant. Probably only 2 people know that they're lactose intolerant, right? And I think similarly, sort of from a gluten conversation, it's the same kind of analogy, right? I mean, are you kind of not supposed to be having gluten? You don't know it. So I think that creates a challenge from a social commerce perspective, both for a seller to understand the proposition, and then for a seller to actually, as Abhinav said initially, right? A seller will correctly find a product and sell it to the right person. But how do they even know that that's the right person for your product?
Got it. We are at a 1 hour mark. So unless there are any other questions, shall we close this discussion? I don't know, Vinay, Naman, if you had any other thing that you wanted to ask.
One last parting question for both Abhinav and Abhishek. Would love to get your thoughts. So depending on the report that you read, the Indian e-commerce opportunity is going to be either 100 billion or 800 billion by 2025, 2030, 6% of private consumption to 22% of private consumption. So numbers are varied, but the way you have analyzed the market, the propensity of people to both resell and buy, where do you see social commerce going over the next 3 to 5 years? What percentage of the e-consumption will be influenced by social commerce? Some thoughts there, especially as brands think about, their go-to-market channels. How do they think about prioritization?
So I think on the market size bit, right, Vinay, it's a very interesting one because we've also wrapped our heads around it and cracked our heads. One of the biggest challenges is that how do you define social commerce for market sizing perspective? If Fab India is messaging its customers and saying that, hey, come to my store, and if not, I can share a catalog here on WhatsApp and you can place an order and I will deliver. Is that social commerce? Is the neighborhood Kirana store trying to get orders on WhatsApp? Is that social commerce? Or is it only an orders being processed by Shop101, Meesho, Glow Road? Is that only social commerce? Or brands trying to sell through their website but using influencers to promote themselves on Instagram? Is that social commerce, right? I think that is, at least is the question. If you think about it from the broadest sense, where we include all of these and also potentially even the informal transactions where some part of the conversation is on a social media or and then goes offline and then the transaction is consummated somewhere else, the opportunity is pretty massive. Even if we were to just look at the formal part of it, which is captured by either like a transaction being originated on some of the platforms or being captured, I would peg that I would peg it in definitely double-digit billion-dollar opportunity a few years down the line. Whether it's 25, 26, we can discuss debate. Whether it's a $10 billion opportunity or a $15 billion opportunity or a 21, we can discuss debate. But let's put it that it is going to be a sizable one where it is going to be definitely a double-digit billion-dollar opportunity within the next 4 to 5 years.
If I can add to that, Vinay, in your question, you approached it from a prioritization of channels also. I think there, I would switch it from prioritization at some level, because undoubtedly what's going to happen for most brands is that your own channel is the best and what you should absolutely focus the most on. There's no two questions about it. I think at least for most brands, I can't think of an exception. And beyond that, your regular e-commerce is I would say a solid kind of second place, right? Your Amazon, Flipkarts, or whatever other marketplaces. But the thing I think about social commerce is that it may not really replace priority number 1 or 2. But what you have to, I think, ideally recognize is it's not a challenge you can risk ignoring, for sure, because of a couple of reasons. A, it is likely to get you inroads into customer segments that your own website and Amazon will not, right? B, it is something that is actually going to contribute back to your own website and Amazon sales, because purely social commerce will lead to that long tail product discovery problem getting solved for you, right? And thirdly, I think from a long-term perspective or a market size, I go back to my point around the social commerce being something which is being layered on top of content and conversation, right? I mean, to Abhinav's point, that's how I define it. When I think about social commerce, it is commerce that is happening because of a conversation or some content, right? And there is a social interaction built in. If there is, then I think it becomes social commerce in nature, right? And I think that content consumption, that conversation is happening more and more, and only will continue to happen more and more, right? As sort of internet penetration, device penetration increases in India. And therefore, no matter what, the hustle of people, right, individuals, will lead to commerce being layered on top of it. Now, you as a brand can kind of be there at the right place and the right time to leverage that individual's hustle, or you can, not be there. And therefore, I think it's not a question as much of prioritization, but can you afford to ignore this channel or not?
Great.
I think definitely we cannot risk ignoring this channel as brand owners. We just need to find our relevant playbooks and figure out how our portfolio and our messaging fits on these channels. And definitely something that keeps us awake at night as trying to build brands. And thank you so much, Abhinav, Abhishek, for taking the time and talking to all of us about how you're building these platforms and how brands can participate. And I learned so much today, and I'm sure the community has learned tons from this. And keep building this, because this is something that brands do want to see how they can work even more closely, at least from the limited set of brands that have the honor of working with. This is a constant debate, so I'd love to see how we can build this ecosystem further. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Vinay. Thanks Raj. Thanks Abhishek. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Take care. Cheers.